Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, something like that. As you know, usually the introduction comes from our good friend Derek Rezio, but he is unable to join us this evening. He had a flat tire, I believe, on his way home. That's what he's informed us of, Bobby. But I am along here with my good friend Bobby Epler. Bobby, how you doing tonight?
I'm just doing outstanding. All best wishes to Derek and his tire, which is probably flatter than flat right about now. You know, some preliminary discussions were had, and maybe this could be a ducking technique. Dennis and Derek have
Not out of the
been
question.
have been heated in this past week about some events that we'll get to later in the pod. Um, was looking forward to see him duke it out over the airwaves, but we will have to wait another week for that.
Well, we have some notes sent along from our good friend Derek. We'll get to that later in the show, but there might be some duking out with Bobby as Derek's proxy tonight. We'll see how that goes, but yeah, Derek, I sincerely hope that your tire is flat, because otherwise, complete ducking and it's just not a good look. I
Irreparable,
just gotta say.
irreparable damage.
So I mean, let's just start out with it. It's the big story and really all of the sports world, but directly impacts me as a Cincinnati Bengals fan. The AFC Championship game took place last Sunday night, and not without some controversy in both the refereeing department and just on both sides of the ball. There, I certainly have my thoughts, Bobby. What were your takeaways from the game? I know we got to watch this game a little bit together, and you probably didn't get to focus given all of the expletives being thrown across the phone and across the airwaves.
Sure.
But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, truly an outstanding game to watch. Really, really entertaining. Unlike the NFC Championship game, which was a complete blunder. Um, but just a good game. I mean, really, as I kind of mentioned to you after the game was finished, and you were cleaning up,
Fuming?
your plates that you just smashed on the floor and the, pillows that had been strewn over the room. Um, the game, it really didn't seem like a game where there was really a whole lot of mistakes being made by both teams. Now, of course, in a game of this magnitude, any little singular mistake is magnified. But it just seemed like a game that was competitive the whole way. A game that was just watching two elite teams really battle it out. I mean, it felt like a very, very, very evenly matched game, which is, I think, what I'm trying to say at the end of the day. Um, but as I was concerned about, I mean, Patrick Mahomes he's just a bad man, unfortunately. And when your defense can't get a pass rush and put pressure on a guy whose ankle was, as we could see during the game, not so limited that he couldn't play, but limited in some aspects as he wasn't really moving naturally as they kept highlighting with all of the the camera angles and reiterating that every single second. But when you can't put a pass rush on Patrick Mahomes in general, you're going to have a long day at the office. And when you get picked off two times, no matter if they were the fault of Joe Burrow or not, you're going to be in for a long day at the office. And when you can't block anybody because finally your seventh string offensive linemen are getting exposed as they should have been from the jump, you're in for an all day at the office. So in a game that I was really hoping for Cincinnati to win, and at many points they seemed to absorb a punch from Kansas City and kind of rally back, really fighting till the end. But when you make one boneheaded mistake or get one boneheaded penalty or make one boneheaded turnover in these kind of games, it's just the difference. And unfortunately, It was just the difference this year. And I couldn't help but wondering, Dennis, if this had anything to do with the I don't know, the underdog mentality seeming to be reversed almost in a way in this game. With the way that the Cincinnati players were talking beforehand and the city was talking beforehand. I just wonder if that maybe, and I don't know how much this actually plays in players' minds, but how much that actually brought what was, by all accounts, an inferior Kansas City squad and, made them get out of bed. Like, not that they needed any extra motivation to play the AFC Championship game, but made them really circle that day on their calendar and say, we've got to show up, we've got to show them. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
No, I don't disagree with anything that you said. I think that all that is actually fairly accurate, and some of it is directly what I wanted to bring up. I have a lot of thoughts, but let's just start there. I think that you're absolutely right. I think that throughout this last 2 years here, obviously the run to the Super Bowl last year, and then this run deep into the playoffs again this year, there's been this, last year the mantra was, why not us? And it was like that every single game. We had the home game against the Raiders, which, maybe you call that more of a toss-up. We weren't necessarily nobody said we were really going to lose that game necessarily.
Sure.
But then going in and beating Tennessee on the road, the number 1 seed, nobody thought we were going to win that game. Beating Kansas City on the road to get to the Super Bowl, nobody thought we were going to win that game. This year, I think it's fair to say that we were favorites against Baltimore, and then going into Buffalo, based on the performance in Baltimore, I think there was a lot of doubt, and there was a lot of you're going up in the weather, in the snow to Buffalo. It's not going to happen. Once again, we were the underdogs, and we took care of business rather handily. And I think a lot of that has been, over the course of these 2 years, that motivation factor, exactly what you talked about. The why not us, the nobody thinks we can win, nobody thinks we can do this. And I do think that there was too much the other direction heading into this game with the Burrowhead stuff. And I'm not saying you can't trash talk, because that's part of the game and it's a fun part of the game. But if it, as a fan, I think it was a little too much for me. I'm much more of a supporter of just go out there and take care of it and use whatever you need to motivate yourself. Like going into the Buffalo game, I think the whole ticket saga was a big motivator of, the NFL clearly wants to see Buffalo, Kansas City on a neutral site, selling all these tickets, hyping that game up, basically
just
saying
bulletin
it's
board material. Just bulletin board material.
It's bulletin board material, and I think that stuff matters. I don't know how much, kind of like you said, but I think it actually does matter. And maybe that's just me taking a fan perspective and not understanding what the players really care about, but I think that it does. And I think we gave Kansas City too much of that and all of these wins and all of our success, it's been us on the receiving end of that motivating factor. So I do think that was a part of it. And going into the game a little bit, you hit on some of the things. My big thing was complete inability to put any pressure on gimpy Mahomes. It makes no sense. And maybe we just got outplayed up front. Maybe the Chiefs' offensive line was simply just better.
They were a good. To be fair, they were a good unit this season. But
and maybe that's it. And maybe I'm thinking about this too much. But I felt like watching this game, and I think I brought this up to you before, that Lou Anarumo and the defensive coordinator, who has been great all season, and he's been perfect at taking away what the other team wants to do and making them beat us somehow else. Just didn't. It's like they were trying to contain Mahomes from running out of the pocket, which is normally, sure, that maybe is a good strategy. But in this game where he clearly can't put a lot of pressure on his ankle, to just sit back there and give him 10 years to dice apart our secondary. And there's something to be said for the secondary should have played better too. And they weren't their best either. And there's a lot of blame to go around on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion. But when you give a guy like Patrick Mahomes that much time, he's gonna tear you apart. And we tried to bring pressure too. So there's a little bit of credit to Lou Anarumo and his play calling as well, because he would dial up the blitz. It still didn't get home. We still couldn't get pressure on him. We were bringing 5 and 6 guys every once in a while, and it was getting picked up, and Mahomes was still under no pressure. and
That
that
or
simply is not going to get it done.
he pulls one of his patented Mahomes moments where he just kind of jiggles up in the pocket and kind of fakes the guy out or fakes a corner or safety out or something like that, and then just beams it in there at the last second. How many times did we see that as well? Where you thought you had him dead to rights, and then Patrick Mahomes just being Patrick Mahomes slings
he had
one
an incredible ability in this
out.
game to, when we did finally get a little pressure, he got every last second out of the time that he had and then made a perfect throw. I mean, just as the pocket was collapsing, just as things were, I mean, just as I was standing out of my chair anticipating a sack, the ball was 15 yards downfield into Travis Kelce's hands wide open.
Meanwhile, Joe Burrow was running into oncoming defensive line, or it just seemed like half the time like Joe Burrow was somehow running into the defensive lineman.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think some of this actually does fall on Joe Burrow personally, but you cannot overlook the fact that we had 3 starting offensive linemen not available in this game. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, but you had that against Buffalo and you handled business perfectly fine." They played completely differently. And you already said this, but exposed is a good word. And
you're on borrowed time. Time.
It's just a very difficult thing to win like that. Borrowed time, absolutely. You could clearly tell that the running game was so much less effective than it was in Buffalo.
Not established yet.
And sure, I'll get to that too. I also, quick note on Joe Burrow. I love Joe Burrow. Absolutely. A lot of credit to him. We wouldn't be here without him. But in this game, I felt like there were a few times that he quite literally walked into sacks. And sure, the offensive line could have done a better job. I felt about half the sacks. I think he took 5 sacks in the game. Maybe 3 of them were on the offensive line. I can remember 2 instances where the protection was good and he's looking downfield. Pick up a couple yards or throw it out of bounds. Don't fall down into the offensive lineman standing in front of you 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Like, do something else. And so I do think that there was a little bit of blame, at least from my perspective, on those particular plays. But overall, it was still a good game. I mean, he still made some really great throws that kept us in this game. And obviously we couldn't run the ball, so we had to have those.
Sure.
I think it's time.
You think it's time?
With all of that said.
All right.
With all of that said.
All right. Well,
we have to talk
what Dennis is
about.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Dennis. You want to explain it?
Before we get to what you're thinking of, we have to talk about the referees, man.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about them, Dennis. Let's talk about them.
And I have some strong opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Biased opinions.
As you should.
However, I will say that I felt validated this last week as I've had to sit here and listen to the national media and listen to the NFL podcast that I follow and all these guys who have no allegiance to the Cincinnati Bengals in any way say the exact same things that I've been thinking.
Sure.
So I do think that there's a lot of validation. I mean, I think I sent you some of the memes. There's memes going around about Roger Goodell and his button that he gets to push and the scripts that have been handed out before the season. It's a little dramatic, but I mean, come on. You gave Kansas City 12 plays to pick up a first down. You completely whiff on multiple holding calls on the most important play of the game after not whiffing on any of the holding calls against Cincinnati, which I'm not going to dispute that they weren't holding. They were holding. But it's convenient that they got called and the ones against KC didn't. I think that there's a strong argument to be made against the 15-yard personal foul penalty that basically just handed KC the game on a silver platter. I understand why it was called, and if I was on the other side of this argument, I would be like, yeah, how do you not call that? Sure. But it is, for all intents and purposes, weak that someone whose momentum is clearly carrying him into it just looked a lot worse than it was. I mean, he gets his arm on him, poor Joseph Asai, he gets his arm on him, but he's running full speed to try to save the Bengals season on the most important play. And in my opinion, is clearly trying to pull up and does make contact, but it is so minute that Mahomes is already kind of diving and running at such an insane speed, it just looks really bad because he kind of goes flying through the air. So I have my opinions on that. I feel like I'm missing something. You can say that the 12 plays to pick up a first down doesn't really matter because they ended up punting. I would be irate if they, ended up scoring on that drive and it really did matter. But I just cannot understand how you let that happen in the NFL. There's been people saying, there's the referee that comes running in to try to call the play dead from like 25 yards away. Nobody else. There's 7 referees on the field. Not a single other referee saw that there was an issue with the clock and called it dead, and nobody did anything for the duration of that entire play. If that would have mattered in this game, that would be one of the 2 or 3 biggest mistakes I've ever seen on an NFL football field ever. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the one that sticks out, the 15-yard penalty at the end is the one that really sears in my mind.
Sure, it gave him. It was a silver platter.
Just because, like you said, was it probably a foul? Probably. Like if you're unbiased / on the other sideline, you're probably
KC. I'm calling for it.
You're calling for a flag. Now, was it like Derek said? I'm pretty sure in the chat when we were talking about the game, 8 yards out of bounds, he was getting hit. No, I don't think it was quite 8 yards out of bounds. I think his foot had barely went into the white, and we had contact. I'd have to watch the video again, but if memory serves, it wasn't quite that bad. But I digress. The sad part is that just clearly changed the game. That just clearly changed the game. In what was, Mahomes had gotten the first down, fair and square, no problem, and had an opportunity still. At that point, they maybe still could kick the field goal and make it if the kicker makes a miracle kick.
It was short. That was going to be short.
Sure.
100%.
Sure, but, maybe if you're kicking from that long, you put more on it. I don't know how that works. Maybe if that's where they ended up taking the field goal, he gets to take it from there. We'll see what happens. Right.
Makes about 4 yards after the 15-yard penalty.
Sure.
But yeah,
sure.
It could have been a different situation.
Sure. But the fact that penalty gets called, goes down, basically just don't have to do anything else, and it's just a field goal, was just a sad way from a non-biased perspective to end the game, because I was looking forward to overtime. I think that overtime was the rightful place where this game should have been headed, and it didn't happen. I don't know. I that's really the thing that sticks out in my mind, Dennis, is just the fact that there was the whole controversy, like you said, about the ref coming in and calling the play dead. Like you said, if that would have been against my squad, I would have been yelling that was a jobbing. Like you said, it really just comes down to the fact that you're a Bengals fan, and just like any fan would be of any team, if there's some questionable officiating going on, you're going to be more prone to point the finger and notice that kind of stuff because your team is on the wrong end of it. And I don't blame you for that at all. I've done it hundreds of times for the Lions, whether it was a jobbing or it wasn't a jobbing. But in my opinion, it was a penalty. But did it mar what was a very, very good game from coming to a natural conclusion? Should I say? Yes. And that's just
Yes, it did.
And that's the sad part to me. That's the sad part to me. And yeah, and it was.
Yeah, I get it. I look at these things through orange-colored glasses. I get it. But like I already said, I did feel validated in the backlash at the officiating in this particular game from
I mean, it was
just
all over.
nationwide.
It was all over the place.
It was, yeah, it was. And so, you know, as the week progressed, I felt a little bit better about that. But it is just a really tough way to lose the season.
Absolutely.
I really would have, like, if we would have gone to overtime and lost, I would be on here so upset, probably at the same level, but at least I would have other things to point to, and we wouldn't have to sit here and talk about a free 15 yards winning the game for Kansas City.
I mean, I think it's underrated, the fact that Kansas City just got such a good kick return on that, on that drive that just set them up, and that's just something that I think people don't talk about enough. And that how do you let a guy bring?
Yeah, we also don't talk about the missed block in the back on that play.
I mean, sure. That what, and I do remember on that particular play, Dennis calling for a block in the back. I do remember yelling immediately to you that there was a block in the back that was missed. However, you gotta hope that you're not gonna allow a guy to run it back past midfield on a punt return. So that did kind of set you up for failure in that aspect, but it doesn't help that you had what was pretty widely considered by people that I saw blocking the back, and then you come back down at the other end and get a 15-yarder. So that doesn't help you, but it's like I said, it was everything was even with the block in the back, right? Even with the block in the back that was missed, they don't call the 15-yard penalty. This game is still coming to a pretty natural conclusion. Like, people aren't really looking too much at the block in the back because, if Mahomes gets them down to field goal range with like a couple seconds left, makes the kick, more power to you. If Harrison Butker makes the 61-yarder, you just got to tip your cap at that point and say, okay, I guess it was their day. But just a tough way for the game to end, especially after all that this rivalry has been made out to be. Comes down to, we don't get overtime, we get 15 yards and a chip shot field goal to end it.
Correct. Just painful. I know that a lot of people didn't want to see it in this way. I was certainly
one of those people.
Upset is maybe an understatement.
Irate.
But at the end of the day, it comes down to variance, right? We were 3-0 against Patrick Mahomes. Man,
they're due. They're due.
And it's going to be, I believe, a rivalry that moves into the future. I have frustrations and long-term questions about what the rest of this roster looks like after Joe Burrow gets his bag.
Uh-oh!
But that's for another podcast, I think, because there's some other things to talk about, particularly something I know that you want to get into, and I think we can.
Okay. Well, of course. And what Dennis is referred to, ladies and gentlemen, is kind of a long story. But what the nuts and bolts of it is, Dennis Weaver, diehard Cincinnati Bengals fan, and trust me, folks, when I tell you I was listening to this guy pop off during this game, actually the past couple weeks, I think I've watched a couple of these games, I think, with you. Maybe
which is a miracle.
Maybe all of them.
Back to watch.
Maybe all of them at this point. I have no idea. But
absolute miracle.
But anyway, just nothing but yelling and jiving every single play, darn near. This guy's diehard as it comes. But I think that it basically comes down to the fact that Derek, who couldn't join us today, we won't, we heard the tire was flat. We heard that. We're going to assume that was what happened.
Do we need visual evidence?
We don't need visual evidence.
We should have asked for some visual confirmation.
We should have. We didn't. Derek, we hope the tire's doing better. And Dennis hopes you're not ducking. But, it comes down to the fact that Dennis and Derek have a disagreement on essentially what, to put it lightly, what cost the Cincinnati Bengals this game. And I think Derek, as he kind of tried to summarize in the chat, that a lot of this game was on the shoulders of the head coach, Zach Taylor. And Dennis, I don't know if Dennis is, I'll let Dennis kind of explain his overall general thoughts on how Zach Taylor has been as coach in general, and then we'll talk about how he thought he performed that game when we get into this full segment. But the thing with Derek, and as we've discussed on this pod, is that once Derek sets in on a stance on the matter, it is tough to get him off that stance.
No kizzy.
It is tough to get him off that stance, no matter what evidence is presented. And he's a man that sticks to his guns, and that is a respectable trait, but also it's a tough debate. So, Dennis, Derek couldn't be here, but he wasn't stingy in the reasons that he left that Zach Taylor, as he puts it, had a disaster class showing against the Kansas City Chiefs. And he wrote down here, which I am going to read to you and get your reaction. First time he's hearing these folks. All the instances that Zach Taylor cost this team the game.
How many do we got here, Bobby? How many am I in for?
It's looking like about 4 or 5 points that you're going to have to listen to and discuss. But overall, just before we get into it, Dennis, what were your overall thoughts on Zach Taylor's, I guess, performance this season, but also in this game in general?
Yeah, no, I have a lot of love and support for Zach Taylor. It comes from the orange-colored glasses in general, I'll admit, because I am, as you mentioned, a diehard fan who lived through the Marvin Lewis era of not horribleness, but mediocrity, and of just really zero hope of any true success. I mean, there was the idea we would make the playoffs, and that was about where it ended, and everybody knew it, and nobody was really motivated under Marvin Lewis. I mean, when he started his career in Cincinnati, when he first came to Cincinnati, he was pretty good, and really turned this team around from what was really a disaster. But at the end of his stay, which is really when I was most invested in this team, it was disgusting to watch. And so Zach Taylor came in, had a rough first year with a really bad roster, and has improved us to what is now a true contender in the AFC, and will remain that way until this roster is changed and shaken up in a major way. And so the fact that he has done that, and all of the things that he has taken along the way, just the way he speaks, the way he handles the media, the way he talks about his players, the way he interacts with the city of Cincinnati, I have found to be absolutely at another level than what I was used to. And maybe it's not at a, I'm not saying Hall of Fame coach level by any means. He's young in his career. I'm just saying I've appreciated what he's done for this team and this franchise. And so I come in with that bias. In this game, I think there's a little blame to go on Zach Taylor. I think I threw it in the chat right before we got started here. So I am interested to see what Derek has to say, because I know that there's some points on there that he has that I completely disagree with. But I'm anticipating maybe 1 or 2 that I do kind of agree with. The play calling in this game at points did befuddle me, because I felt like we were having some success early on in drives, throwing these swing passes or screen plays to Ja'Marr Chase, to Joe Mixon, getting the ball into our playmakers' hands rather quickly to somewhat compensate for the fact that we were starting 3 backup offensive linemen who clearly couldn't protect Joe Burrow for that long or have success in the running game. And we're popping off 6-7 yards on these plays. Like, they weren't big hitters, but they were a few yards here, a few yards there. I was loving it. I thought this is absolutely brilliant. But then the rest of the drive on 2nd and 3 and 2nd and 4, we're doing nothing but sitting back and taking deep shots that either are falling complete or Burrow gets sacked, and then now all of a sudden it's back to 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 12. And that just made zero sense to me of why you don't continue to run the things that are having some success. And I know that there's, different downs and different situations call for different plays, and there's a lot of analytics that go into it. But Kansas City was really struggling to guard these freaking plays. And we ran them like once a drive. Like, just take your medicine, march it down the field, pick up 5 yards on every play. I mean, I know it's not that simple, but it frustrated me that we didn't get more of that, because I thought it was the only thing having success. So make them come up and beat that first. Make them come up and stop Ja'Marr Chase at the line of scrimmage, or stop a screen to Joe Mixon. And then take your shots down the field, and something might be there. But I'm sure he has his reasons, but I did disagree with that. That's my thoughts in general.
I will say this. I mean, and I know this from my time in the long podcast history of my time going back and forth with Derek on Jared Goff, and I'm sure you kind of have the same mentality. I know we've kind of briefly discussed it before, but it's not that a person like Zach Taylor, a player like Jared Goff, is free from blame necessarily. There are plenty of things that you maybe, like you said, there are some points that you wish he would have done better. Some things, some situations that maybe could have been handled a little bit differently. Play calling, what have you. And same with Jared Goff. There's some aspects of his game that could be better. But at the end of the day, not everybody can be Tom Brady. And not everybody can be Bill Belichick and Andy Reid. And the amount of hate that Derek has on a lot of players that are not those guys can kind of make you drive you to defend them for no reason other than the fact that, come on, they're doing better than you thought they would. Come on, give them a break. But anyway, I digress. Derek, that's a great point. As I promised, I will read your points to Dennis and try to represent your standpoint on this side of the table. Here we go. Zach Taylor disaster class, as Derek said, and I quote, first point. 9 minutes left on the drive that ended in an arm punt interception. It was 2nd and 3, and 2 deep passes were called.
That's exactly. I mean, that's what I just said. That's the quorum I just laid out for everybody listening. So I can't sit here and say I disagree with that one. I thought that there were some ridiculously, almost borderline asinine play calls after having success, and I bet you. That first down play was probably a swing pass to Jamar Chase for 7 yards, and then we decided to throw it deep twice. I don't remember because my emotions had taken control at that point. Some of that's kind of fuzzy, so I'm glad that he's bringing back the details from an objective standpoint. I can't necessarily disagree with that one.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this, but if any NFL teams are looking to hire an offensive or defensive coordinator, or a head coach for that matter, Derek is actually applying. So if you're looking to hire,
he has all the answers.
Derek it could be your man because
the door's open.
The amount of insight this man has per game, you would think that he was a head coaching candidate. So if you're looking for a guy, hit up garbagetimetakes@gmail.com. We can get you the contact you need
in the comments, whatever it is.
We can get you the contact you need because our man Derek, we need you here, man. We miss you, but is looking for his opportunity at the NFL. So Dennis agrees on point number 1.
1 point for Derek.
1 point for Derek. Dennis down horrendous. Point number 2. Completely disregarding using Joe Mixon in the run game. 5 rushes for 22 yards is criminal. Why is it criminal? One of the best ways to slow down a pass rush that was causing havoc is to make the defense respect the run.
Sure, there's something to be said for that, but also, what was it? He ran 8 times for like 20 yards.
5 for 22. Is what Derek put down.
For 22? I swear he rushed.
I'll check the official stats.
Anyway, you check the official stats. The fact was, it wasn't freaking working. I would have loved to see a little bit more commitment to the run game too. But when Joe Mixon runs right into the defender and only picks up 2 yards like he has all year, and you have 3 backup
8 for 19. 8 for 19.
8 for 19. They rushed 8 times, and what's that? An average of like 2.2 yards per carry.
I think it was
2.4 yards per carry.
Yep.
I mean, I would have loved to seen it had more success, and that's a reason that we beat Buffalo was the fact that those runs we were getting 9 yards a carry out of Joe Mixon out of the shotgun because our offensive line was somehow dominating. And that just simply wasn't happening. And I can point to a lot of reasons for that. 3 backup offensive linemen, a really solid defensive front from Kansas City. And for all intents and purposes, now we have some additional information about Joe Mixon we'll get to later in the show. But I personally think, and I've said it all year, Joe Mixon's been a disappointment. I'm gonna say it as a Bengals fan. I think we could do better. I really do. He's got some talent, but he does not find the holes that are there for him at nearly an efficient enough clip. He just doesn't. He just will run into defenders way too often for my liking anyway. He's got some dynamic playmaking ability, but he's average or maybe slightly above average. I really don't think he's an elite running back.
All right, so we'll go.
Well, that's like a tie.
We'll say neutral. We'll say neutral on that one. Derek, 5 rushes for 22 yards. Derek, I mean, let's check that. Derek.
I mean, that's to get the box score correct. Maybe that should be a point for me.
I mean, I think we got to go point for Dennis on failure to check the box score because
there we go.
CBS Sports has it as Joe Mixon 8 attempts for 19 yards. So
I swear he had 8 attempts.
I was
listening to somebody else talk about it today.
Joe Mixon, I mean, he might be actually. I think what he did was put Samaje Perine's numbers, which were 5 for 22.
I meant to have this before the podcast. Over the course of the season, I would not even be surprised if Samaje Perine has outrushed Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what Derek was trying to mean here because he said completely disregarding using Joe Mixon in the run game and then said 5 rushes for 22 yards is criminal. Like that, I'm assuming that he was trying to mention those were Joe Mixon stats, but must have just switched them with Samaje. So, I see what happened, Derek. I see what happened.
Which is more efficient, by the way. That's about twice the yards per carry.
Correct.
For Samaje.
Correct. 2.4 to 4.4. So, Joe Mixon not having a good day.
Making Joe Mixon money and getting outrushed by Samaje Perine for a good portion of the season. You just simply can't.
Zoinks. All right, so we'll go 1-1. Throwing the ball 41 times and having 46 called pass plays with 5 sacks and 3 backup linemen in a game that really didn't call for you to have to throw the ball that much.
I mean, that's just the exact same thing we just talked about. I mean, the opposite of not running the ball is throwing the ball. What do you expect us to do? Call no plays? Just punt? I mean, that's the exact same point. That's not even a new point.
I mean, it's certainly concerning. I will say it's certainly concerning when Joe Mixon is only getting you 2.4 yards a carry because, as Derek will respect, that's LeGarrette Blount-esque and zoinks.
It is. It feels like LeGarrette Blount. Watching Joe Mixon is like watching a young LeGarrette Blount. It's stupid, and you know he should be better than that. You know that he should be able to make more happen. He has like 1 or 2 games a year where he goes off the rails and looks like a Pro Bowl running back.
I don't know. Maybe Derek would argue that you try to run it with Samaje Perine, but I don't know. I don't know.
More efficiency.
I don't know.
It was better.
I don't know. But he said, you guys completely disregarded Joe Mixon in the run game. So, I'm not really sure. That point is kind of mute because we already kind of talked about that. So, we'll go on to the next one. On the last drive, calling a timeout with a full minute left after a 2-yard gain. Did we learn nothing from Buffalo and giving Mahomes too much time?
I'm trying to remember that exact situation. I might agree with him on that one. I do remember what I thought was a misplaced timeout. I mean, here's the thing though. I don't completely fault him. I think it's a toss-up because it's an aggressive play call, right? I mean, not play call. It's an aggressive call to take a timeout there. You want to go down and win the game. And you want I don't blame him for putting things on Joe Burrow's shoulders and putting things on his offensive shoulders. It's a lot of trust. It was ballsy. And it obviously didn't work out. And maybe if it were me, I would have made a different decision because there's something to be said for not giving Mahomes too much time, and that's got to be something that you're thinking about if you're Zach Taylor. I would hope that he was at least thinking about it, and he said, basically, I would rather lose this game in regulation than just accept overtime. I guess I'd rather... And here's the thing I should probably say. Given everything that happened in this game, and given all the problems I have with the defense, at this point, they'd still only given up 20 points to Patrick Mahomes. And so, and a defense that has had your back time and time and time again this year.
In the second half, especially.
You're saying, okay, I'm going to go down and we're going to win this game. And if we don't, I trust the defense. And they probably would have been trusted and would have gotten the job done if it weren't for a loose arm that tapped Patrick Mahomes' back as he's running out of bounds at 50 miles an hour. So, I mean, sure, it was aggressive. Hindsight's 2020. That's a Monday morning quarterback take, if you ask me. That's knowing what ended up happening. Sure, he shouldn't have called a timeout, but like in the moment, I think you trust your team well enough to put it in their hands and call that.
And the last point on the list that I can see here. And last but certainly not least, in the words of Derek Rezio, allowing a backup tackle to be isolated against a 15-plus sack player and potential defensive player of the year with the game on the line. Dennis, I know you're chomping at the bit.
Eric, for you, I know what a bleeping double team is. We used it all damn game. I've heard people say this week that we even triple teamed freaking Chris Jones at points in this game. Triple team. Get your head out of your behind. This is a horrible take. We had 3 backup offensive linemen. What did you expect us to do? I'm sure they've missed some assignments. You probably looked like a single team because somebody probably didn't do their freaking job because they're a 6th-string backup tackle. There's no way that Zach Taylor was calling protections that allowed one-on-one with Chris Jones. There's no way. I didn't see it a single time. Pull up the tape if you really believe that. And I'll probably point out while some dude, freaking Hakeem Adeniji, probably fell on his backside on the play and was just completely out of it because he's a doofus. There was I mean, you could tell that the offensive line was a little discombobulated over the course of this game, and that's not Zach Taylor's.
You know, I do have to say, Dennis. I mean, I guess I wasn't paying as much attention to the protection as maybe you or Derek were, but at the end of the day, you've got like 17 million offensive linemen that are backups in there. It's going to be a little bit tough to get the protection exactly the way you want it to be. But I know you got a lot to say, Dennis.
I mean, I've said pretty much everything I need to say. It's not even just that there's a decrease in the talent level, which there is clearly when you have those guys in there. I mean, La'el Collins, even though he struggled at points this season, to Hakeem Adeniji, the 6th rounder out of Kansas, not going to get it done. But it's also a communication issue because the offensive line is a unit who has to understand what they're supposed to be doing and where they're supposed to be, just like every other player on the field, on every single down. And if you don't play for the entire season in the first game of the playoffs, it's just not going to be there. And we saw it early in the season when the offensive line, as Derek pointed out, wasn't gelling because it was a bunch of new faces and they didn't have down the communication aspect of what being a good offensive line needs to entail. It was basically a brand new offensive line the last 2 weeks, and somehow they overperformed against Buffalo. I'm still trying to figure out how they did that.
The snow,
I know
maybe.
there's something to be said for the snow and the loss of ability to defensively pass rush from Buffalo. Von Miller wasn't on the field. All those sorts of things factored into it. But the fact of the matter is this offensive line was faulty from a talent perspective and also a ability to work together perspective, and it showed the entire game. And you can't fault Zach Taylor for calling an incorrect protection. If he truly did isolate him, isolate a tackle on Chris Jones completely, that was a blunder. I didn't see that at any point, and I'm sure that if it looked like that, it was probably because somebody messed up. That's my take.
And I mean, some very intriguing points brought up by Derek. Dennis, I'm glad you got to say your piece. Not as much disagreement as I thought there was going to be.
No, just I knew that the offensive line one was coming in though, and I had to save it all for that. The rest, he does have some points, and that's been stuff I've been mowing on this week about Zach Taylor, and more or less those were the things that I came to conclusions of, as I already talked about and mentioned even before we started talking through Derek's points. But so you can tell that I'm in agreement on those. There was things that could have been better from pretty much everybody in this game, really. Number one, notably the referees, but also from Joe Burrow, from the offensive line, obviously being injured doesn't help. From Joe Mixon, I talked about, from the defense, from Lou Anarumo, from Zach Taylor. There's enough blame to go around here, and it's not falling on any one person's shoulders. I know Derek likes to scapegoat people, particularly coaches, but that's just not my style. It's not how I roll. Or Jared Goff, correct. And just make absolute fools out of one person. I would rather be realistic and share the blame between everybody who actually deserves it.
Hey, Jared Goff.
Some of it.
Named a Pro Bowl alternate. I just wanted to throw that out there. Pro Bowl alternate, Jared Goff. Come on, baby. Come on. Anyway, go ahead, Dennis.
All right, no, I'm good. Are we good with this game? Because there was another game this week.
There was another game that was so much of a
blah. What did you call it a game?
It was so much of a blah that it was disappointing. Dennis, 49ers Eagles, we were robbed of what could have been potentially a good game, but we'll never know. What are your thoughts?
Correct. I mean, that's really what it is at the end of the day. I mean, you got freaking Christian McCaffrey out here trying to play quarterback, and Kyle Juszczyk getting in on the action. I mean, it was just unfortunate that it was over before it even started. And Brock Purdy would have been out there if he could have been. He was clearly not able to throw the ball down the field. And, a little bit of props, I think, to Brock Purdy for admitting that he couldn't make the plays that he knew he needed to, and he just wasn't physically able to do that. I think there's probably some people like, oh, he should have been out there like fighting and, battling through, which there's something to be said for that. But if you have the recognition that you're going to do more harm than good, which is what I think he came to the conclusion of, he did the right thing. And it's unfortunate that Josh Johnson, Mr. Word escaped me. He's been with every franchise in the NFL just about. The traveler that he is, then gets concussed in this game and is unable to return to play. It was simply an unfair fight. And, we wish we would have gotten to see a little bit more of a competitive game, or at least what had the potential, I thought, to be a very good game. And it just never was so. Because the 49ers defense early in this game played quite well. There were several drives. Philly was pretty much stopped in their tracks. They weren't able to get a lot going. They had that. Also, what an incredible catch from Devonta Smith. That was kind of the highlight of this game. That was insane. But yeah, the Eagles probably were the better team, and they probably were going to win that game, but it's sad that we'll never know.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even end up paying too much attention to this game after, emergency quarterbacks were in use, and it was just so disappointing. I really wanted Brock to pull off the miracle, as I said on last pod, and I think there was a chance, like you said, definitely early in the game. It was nip tuck. It was definitely there for the 49ers to potentially take over, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be. Super Bowl matchup set now, Chiefs-Eagles. Dennis, I know we'll talk about this a little bit next week, probably, before the game actually happens, but what are your just quick little gut reaction to that?
Yeah, here's the thing. I told you, I think I told Derek that after this game I had very little desire in watching the Super Bowl. After the absolute jobbing that took place in Kansas City. that's probably softened a little bit. I'll probably watch it, but only because there's the possibility that the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles play a very tight game. Jalen Hurts gets the ball back, a little under a minute to go, starts driving down the field, and he gets shoved out of bounds with one arm by Chris Jones to set up a game-winning field goal for Jake Elliott. And these Kansas City Chiefs, baby, feel the pain. They feel the burn. And Travis Kelce, if you're listening to this, dead to me. Absolutely dead to me. I thought you were a good guy. You freaking suck. Absolute ridiculous hijacking of the Patrick Mahomes interview after that game, calling out the Cincinnati mayor, pick on somebody your own size. Shut up, Travis. Completely done with that. And yeah, go Eagles, fly. But I really hope it's not a domination. I hope it's snatched from Kansas City's hands by the freaking refs. That's what I hope.
You know, I'm going to give my initial gut reaction, and as they called me on the pod, Unbiased Bob. I don't like either of these teams, and I don't like them a lot. I don't, and for a couple clear but maybe personal reasons. Number one, I don't like the Eagles because they're in the NFC, and the Lions just played the Eagles earlier this season in Week 1, and I still haven't gotten over the fact that we should have beaten them and we didn't. And quite frankly, I think that I don't know. I've got some gut fraudulent feelings about the Eagles. I don't know why, but I've got some gut feelings that they might be more fraudulent than they're letting on. Who knows? I mean, they win the Super Bowl. There's nothing I can say. I mean, they're in the Super Bowl, but it's just a gut feeling that I have. The Chiefs. I mean, I don't really have any reason to dislike the Chiefs besides the fact that they've been good for like ever. But it really comes down to the fact that I don't want Patrick Mahomes to win anything because I like Tom Brady and I don't want his legacy to be questioned. So, I'm really in a tough spot. I'll have to save my official prediction of who I want to win for next week because I still have to sort it out in my own mind because I'm not sure which is the worst of two evils. But yeah, it's gonna be a good game, I think. So I'll definitely watch.
Yeah, I mean, I know the line opened at like Philadelphia -1.5 or something. I think it flipped over to Kansas City. Now it's back. So, you know, in the betting world, it's a 50-50 right now, and that's how I feel about it at this point. I mean, obviously, we'll have more info next week, a couple days before the game starts when we record, and we will go from there. Any other thoughts on the NFL before we transition?
No additional thoughts from me, Dennis.
All right. Well, I know that there's something that you're dying to get to, Bobby, that we've discussed off the record a little bit, and has brought out maybe a bit of debate. We could try to keep it civil here, but this time you're representing yourself and not Derek.
Yes. I'm sorry, Derek. I hope I did you justice.
The question for you is this, Bobby, to get things off on the right foot. As you know, I'm all about keeping things civil, as I said. My question is LeBron James a crybaby?
Well, I'm gonna have to go with no.
The shocker.
I'm gonna have to go with no, because, as you eloquently put it, Dennis, just a few moments ago, there was a jobbing that occurred, a blatant and flagrant jobbing, in a game costing jobbing, mind you. And I was just so disgusted at what happened in this Boston Celtics.
I'm assuming he makes a free throw.
Boston Celtics Lakers game that happened this past weekend. When I'm sure everybody in the sports world has seen the clip by now because it's kind of hard to not. But there was a absolutely obvious and flagrant hack on the arm of LeBron James as he's going up for the layup to win the game. And as time is about to expire, and the ref is standing about 3 feet away, staring directly at the play. I don't know how it gets more obvious than that. As I told you, Dennis, I really don't know how it gets more obvious than it got. I understand people make mistakes, and obviously one was made. as the NBA referees' Twitter has got to come out and say that they're going to have sleepless nights over missing the call because it was so flagrantly missed. But as I pointed out to you, the Lakers aren't that good this season. They're having a objectively pretty bad year so far. I mean, I don't think there was a lot expected of them, but obviously LeBron James, wherever he goes, has aspirations of achieving very highly, to making the playoffs, trying to compete for championships. And when you're on a team that has struggled, every game matters, especially games against the very good teams that you're pretty much not expected to win against. That could maybe light the match of this team and start them on a roll. And when you're fighting for a spot in the play-in game and in the playoffs, every single game matters. And the fact that you get absolutely hosed and jobbed doesn't help. Sure, you got to make a free throw. I guess I'm just assuming that he would have made one of two free throws. But like I said to you when it happened, there's a reason that we see athletes, at the top level, sometimes their reactions are over the top, rightfully so. Rightfully so, I think, for their rightfully over the top. From their perspective, in the sense that they've dedicated their entire lives to this sport, and in the case of somebody like LeBron James, you're the top echelon of what you're doing, and you understand that every single thing matters. And when comes down to getting jobbed on such a basic call, especially for the, I think this was especially compounded for the Lakers because this kind of thing has happened like 3 or 4 times this season before that, where the Lakers have come down to pretty much a last second call that went against them. And then it kind of all culminated, especially with a nationally televised game against their rival, the Boston Celtics. Comes down to a final second shot in what should be a clear layup. Jason Tatum literally attempts to intentionally foul LeBron James because he's like, it's LeBron. He's going to basically make it an easy layup / dunk the ball at the basket because he's LeBron effing James. And that's what he does. And I'm going to hack him. And Blind Bat over here, wearing a zebra vest, can't make the call. Now, I will say, I like to commend, if there's one person I'd like to commend, it would be Patrick Beverley, who did the appropriate thing, I think, after this, and, tried to show the official that he had made a mistake and bring him the evidence of the situation, because they clearly didn't want to look at any other monitors to right the ship. So he thought, let's just right the ship.
We're not allowed to,
That's
not reviewable.
Let's just right the ship right here and get it straight. Obviously, cost him a tech. And Lakers went on to lose in overtime, which was actually I expected them to just get blown off the court in overtime, because normally when things like this happen in the NBA, it's a complete wash after that. But the Lakers kept it within 4 points at the end. But the fact of the matter is, the game should never gone to overtime. It should have been over. The refs made a mistake. They admitted that they made a mistake, which I appreciate. But that doesn't change the fact, as it did in the Cincinnati game, that you got jobbed and you lost the game. And every game means a lot. And especially when you're at the top echelon of your sport and dedicate as much as they do, he was over the top. Sure, he was on the ground, reacting visibly, trying to yell at the refs, saying, what the heck happened? Honestly, it's not, I don't really understand how it really hurts anybody. Sure, he might make him look bad, but to be honest, I think the people that look worse in this situation are the refs. So I don't know what to say. I mean, you make a basic call, like the most basic call in basketball is when somebody goes up and you hack them across the arm blatantly, you make the call. And especially when you're an NBA ref standing 2 feet from the situation. I digress. They should have won the game. Not going to really matter probably too much in the scheme of things, because the Lakers are probably going to find a way to play themselves out of the play-in game if they haven't already. But it doesn't help when you had a chance to pick up one that you couldn't get.
No, I mean, I understand it was a blown call. It was clearly, obviously missed. The refs have said that. Everybody has said that. There's no disagreement from me there. The defense of the reaction is somewhat understandable in the fact that there is a lot of emotion and there's a lot of care, and you've put in all this time and effort to get to this level of the game, and you want to win the game, and to have it taken away from you like that is frustrating.
No doubt.
However, I do push back on being a justifiable reaction because uh, there's it doesn't hurt anybody, but it is so incredibly annoying and it is so incredibly frustrating to watch. And the reason I mean, take, the game mattered. You said the game mattered, like they're fighting, it's a rival, whatever. We just talked about the AFC Championship game, a game that matters, by the way. And when we got jobbed out of a game and lost on a last second blunder, I was, as a fan, on the floor kicking and screaming, and Bobby can justify whatever. But you know what Joe Burrow did is walked out to the middle of the field, shook Patrick Mahomes' hand and said, "Good game, catch you next time," in the most professional manner that you could possibly imagine. Which, by the way, is super impressive because that's not how I was reacting as a fan, which is my right. When you're the player, you're in the National Basketball Association. Your career, your job is to be a professional basketball player. Act professional. It's not professional. And it's not just LeBron James. I feel like I'm attacking LeBron James here. It's why I don't like the NBA. They all act that way. It's the entire league. It's so dramatic. Everybody in the entire league is way more dramatic than they are in any other league. You watch the NFL, nobody reacts that way. Maybe Tom Brady throws a tablet. Like, that's the biggest reaction you're going to get. And maybe there should be somebody saying something about that, if you ask me.
There definitely
But to be
was.
on the court, on in the middle of the court, not crying, but literally in such an incredible amount of distress and show of drama that I've ever seen, was just repulsive to me. When your job is to be professional, and it just it's just not professional. It's why I don't like the NBA in general. It's not just him. They all act like that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I understand that, but to me, I can also understand the human aspect of just the fact that, like, how am I supposed to, like, get in back in the zone of I'm gonna now go play overtime when I literally, as every single person on that bench believed, the game was already won, overdone. We should be packing our bags on the plane, going home. And now
Part of being a professional athlete.
and now we're just because
Leave it to
of
the fans to be upset.
yeah, I just don't think that's fair to think that the players just can't do that. They just can't be upset.
Players in
about
every
it.
other league do it. Players in every other professional league do it all the time, except the NBA. Why do they get a free pass to be over dramatic?
I mean, sure, the NBA is dramatic, but I don't think it's every other league doesn't have examples of this. I mean, I
Examples, sure, but not as routine and integrated into the structure of the game and admissible as it is in the NBA.
just
There's
like
moments, sure.
I can't like what other examples can you think of this season? I can't. I'm not
Well,
from the NBA.
I
I
can't
can't
tell
think
you
of a
any because
lot
it's
of
the
them.
first NBA game I watched all year because I won't watch it. So I have no idea.
But then at the same time, like, how can you say that it's like commonplace? Like, if you don't watch
Because
any
the
of the
reason I don't
games.
watch it is because I've seen so much of this in the past. It's and usually it's not. Usually it's not to this level, but it's always about a foul. Every single foul was that wasn't a foul or that was a foul. Every single. I mean, it routinely going after refs yapping, not shutting up. Just I've seen it way too many times, and I can't point to specific examples because I don't watch enough. But that's one of the reasons that I specifically stopped. If never even really started, but refused to watch the NBA.
I'll end this topic the way that I kind of summarized it to you. Was it over the top? Was it needed? No, it wasn't needed. It was over the top. But at the same time, am I gonna rake him across the coals for it? No, I'm not going to rake him across the coals for it because, like I said, the situation, in my mind, the people that were the thing that is appalling and worse to watch for me is the fact that we can't get a basic call being made. So
See,
like I don't really care. Like I don't really care about LeBron being upset and on the floor about it. Most fans that are watching this are either in two camps. They're probably either in my camp, which is the LeBron fan, saying, this is absolute jive. We got hosed on a call. Or they're in the LeBron hater category, and they're saying, haha, they're laughing and getting enjoyment and entertainment out of seeing LeBron in agony and getting jobbed. Because that's just how NBA fans are. They're either LeBron stans or they hate LeBron, and MJ's the second coming. So
this is why I'm none of those things.
So, like I said, was it wrong? Yes. Am I gonna rake him over the coals? No. Refs, please, can you just make a basic call next time? Thank you. I understand mistakes are made, but let's get it dialed in. Let's get it right. And let's make it possible for those plays to be reviewed if they aren't already.
Bobby, shockingly not raking LeBron over the coals. Maybe you would like to rake Kenny Morgensai over the coals.
Well,
I heard there's some trade offers going down. We got fantasy baseball right around the corner, Bobby. Can we get an outlook on the season
yes,
from your perspective?
I mean, fantasy baseball upcoming. I'm very, very excited. If nobody could tell. Kenny Morgensai, fellow league owner, coming back to the doorstep again, coming back to the well, because he knows that when deals want to get done, there's only one guy in this. When you got to get a deal done, there's only one guy in this league you can go to, and he's got a proven resume. And it's me. It's me.
If you ever want to trade for somebody who's going to get hurt within the next 48 hours, go to Bobby. That's the Dennis Weaver policy on that.
And there's some preliminary deals getting worked out. The season's looking bright. The season's looking bright. I mean, we've got picks up the yin yang. The draft goes to like the 18th, 19th round, and I'm going to be done in like the 13th round or something. Redonkulous. But I already got a first round pick saved for next year too, which is just beautiful scenes.
Oh no.
Derek, hope Freddie Freeman is the second coming for you this season as well. I will miss him very dearly, but I will enjoy the first round pick, I promise.
Bobby, closing thoughts. Will Ozzy Albies trip on Aaron Hurd?
Closing thoughts on that is absolutely yes, and I'm done with him. He's not returning to the roster.
He's dead to you.
I've had time to think it over, and it's over. And if anybody drafts Stephen Kwan, I may find you and
trade immediately.
And you better answer your calls. That's all I'm saying. Answer my calls.
For Stephen Kwan.
You better answer my calls.
First rounder.
Nathan, if you're watching this, if you draft Stephen Kwan just to spite me, like you did Aaron Judge last year, you better bet there's going to be some more rule proposals that I'm going to be submitting because this is going to be absolutely ridiculous.
We got some Democratic rule proposals being suggested in the.
There's going to be veto. I will rally the league and we will veto this because this is ridiculous.
Alrighty, well, I think it's come to that time. If you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get some winners and losers in here. There's probably a lot of them from this week, but what do you got for a primary winner?
For winners, I've got none other than the Philadelphia Eagles for just marching into a Super Bowl, waltzing in with almost zero resistance. Zero resistance. And it was absolutely disgusting. Yeah, like I said, when literally all your opponents fall apart at the seams, you got to take what you can get. And now you've got the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, which once again I think on paper are an inferior team to you. Especially with, Mahomes obviously played very well against the Bengals, but you still probably not 100% with the ankle. And, having Jalen Hurts, fighting his own injury, but the fact that, something to be said about the fact that he's coming back now kind of somewhat fresh after sitting out all that time with the injury, not sustaining additional wear and tear. That's got to be noted too. And just really, like I said, the fact that they got there without waltzing through the 49ers, who should have made that game very competitive and just had everything fall apart at the seams and had C-Mac in at quarterback.
Yeah, that's a really good one. It ended up being quite easy, I would say, for the Philadelphia Eagles, for all those reasons. And my winner of the week is sort of semi the opposite of that in a weird way. It's Trey Lance, because now all of a sudden he has another shot in this league. I mean, he probably always did, but now we got Brock Purdy out for at least 6 months if he gets his surgery, if not more. And I mean, Jimmy G is probably going to be freaking out of here, and the job is just wide open again. And we might have some sort of competition between coming off of injury, Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. Who knows what's going to happen with that? But I think that a lot of 49ers fans would have been calling for just Brock Purdy to be the starter next year, especially if he would have just won this game and taken them to the Super Bowl.
Oh, sure.
And, now that window is back open. So that's what I got. Loser this week.
Loser of the week is actually going to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, because his scoring record is about to be passed by LeBron James for number one all-time scorer in NBA history. It's basically secured in a foregone conclusion at this point. Before his game tonight, I think he was like 89 points away. I haven't quite got to see how it all finished out tonight. But probably another 25, 26, 30 points or whatever. And it's basically looking like it's projected that he will probably break the record on Tuesday if he plays in every game. So, Kareem, nobody thought his record was going to be broken. And here it is. It's going to be broken. Tough scenes, loser of the week.
Yeah, very impressive stuff, and does constitute a loser for Kareem. And my loser, sad to say, it pains me.
Oh, no.
That's Joe Mixon.
Oh, no! Oh!
Who, as we were informed of earlier this evening, is kind of warrant out for his arrest on, I believe it is assault charges against Mr. Mixon, after getting raked over the coals by me on this podcast, and now he's got to face this. I mean, just brutal night for Joe, all around, really. Here's the thing. I have my concerns and problems with Joe Mixon as a football player. This is pushing me over the edge.
Oh, no.
But we got 2 more years on his contract, so this is turning into a disaster.
Oh, no.
Got him for the next 2 seasons.
Should I start talking on the R word for next season? For the Bengals.
I mean, here's the thing. We got to draft a running back this year. We got to get ready, because unless something drastically changes, I'm done after this contract's over.
Oh, no.
Free agent.
See you later.
Move on. Yeah, we got to start. I mean, maybe not this year. You don't necessarily have to, but, we got to start figuring out what's next after this, because I thought he was an incredible disappointment. And the freaking coaching staff is telling you that by the fact that Samaje Perine is getting more playing time because he's been more effective than Joe Mixon. And so the whole coaching staff is telling you exactly what I'm saying about Mr. Mixon. So it's tough sledding for him right now. And, hopefully he can turn things around in both his personal life and on the field. But right now it's a little point. Anybody else you want to mention in this segment before we move on?
No additional winners or losers for me.
Winner Roger Goodell for always getting his way and having a magic button that determines all of the matchups ahead of time. Winner Roger Goodell. Congratulations. Right Bench Ballers. You have yours picked out.
I do, and I'm going to scroll back to none other than this Sunday in the Chiefs-Bengals game. I'm going to go with none other than Marquez Valdez-Scantling as the right bench baller. I'm sorry, Dennis, but I have to do it.
He killed me. He killed
6
me.
receptions for 116 yards and 1 tub. Led the Chiefs in receiving. I mean, I know he gets playing time for them, but really wasn't. I don't think anybody was expecting that kind of performance from MVS. And he certainly showed up on some deep balls when Mahomes needed him the most, and really was just a thorn in the side for the Bengals all night. You know, retread from Green Bay, didn't want him, and the Chiefs kind of jumped at the opportunity to get him. And AFC Championship game, he shows up with a 100-yard game and a tub. So, props. Glad he's not doing it against the Lions. MVS, great work.
Yeah, it pains me to say and pain me to watch, but he had a fantastic game. He burned us on a couple occasions. I remember specifically burning Jesse Bates, which was hard to watch. And he had a good game. It's a good one. I'm going to surprise, actually, in a legitimate surprise, the NBA.
No,
given everything I've just said, but not for the reason you think. We got a former UC Bearcat making the list, baby. Former UC Bearcat and I believe Auburn Tiger, Tara Eason. Dropped 20 points, 13 rebounds for a double-double, assist, a couple of steals, and a couple of blocks in there. And a rare 112-106 victory for Houston Rockets over OKC on Wednesday night. The game of the century, the Rockets and the Thunder. Tara Eason getting it done way above his averages for the season. And, go UC, go Bearcats.
Well, congrats to him. I'm sure that a whole 5 people were watching that. I'm sure a whole 5 people were watching that game.
I did not watch it. Not at all.
Because we don't have the
I don't watch the NBA.
Because we don't have the bookkeeper Derek here, we're gonna have to.
Have
to hold off on our garbage time takes the money segment because every pick should count. So we'll have to hold off on that, and then we'll make our.
Well, we also don't have a football game this weekend anyway. We had to go.
That's true. We would have to go to the NBA, and we all know you don't watch that, Dennis. So wouldn't want to.
Except for when LeBron James is crying on the floor.
Correct. That's the only time you're watching, apparently. But we'll be back with Garbage Time Takes Your Money next week for the Super Bowl, I'm sure, and then we'll start transitioning into NBA games and the MLB, obviously, when it comes back up.
That's right, baby. That's right.
All right. I guess I'll hit him with the socials then.
That's all I got. Yeah, hit the socials, man.
All right. At Garbage Time Takes on Twitter, at Garbage Time Takes on Instagram. Of course, you can find the link in the description below to our website where you can find all of our articles and other content that we've made. Hey, feel free to share this with a friend. We've appreciated all the support. We're looking to get to 20 subscribers. Our subscriber numbers have been a little stagnant, so we're looking to get a little boost. So
who wins the Zach Taylor argument, Dennis or Derek?
I gotta see it. I gotta see it in the comments below. Dennis or Derek?
That's right.
On the questions,
I'll take my medicine if I lost. I'll take it.
On the questions, I can't wait until we have Derek back on the pod, because Derek and Dennis clash again. It's going to be must-see TV. But anyway, please share this pod with a friend. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and, of course, let Dennis know if he needs to eat crow. But with that, I think that's all we got.
Do we do the 1-2? Do we do the countdown? Or we just... How do we do this?
I think we got to do it how... Normally Derek does the 3, right? In the 3-2-1.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So how we did when you were gone is we just left a silence on that number, but we can't really do that if it's the start. So I think we'll just
moment of silence for Derek and his tire. We'll start with the moment of
silence.
Yeah. 2.
1. Peace.